Well, one of the special things of this outing was a group of people who went down the Muir Gorge. Muir Gorge is a narrow place in the canyon of the Tuolumne River. We had to hike about a day to get to it. We went down May Creek from May Lake. It was quite a steep creek. This was a side canyon of the main canyon. It was quicker to get down this way than to walk the miles down the main canyon. It was a little bit of slick going because it was rather steep, and of course there's no trail and no footholds except what we could find as we went along. When we got to the bottom of the main canyon, the Tuolumne River, we followed west down the canyon, right next to the Tuolumne River, and made a camp for that night. The next morning, you see, getting ready, we had to prepare our breakfasts. We also had to get our food out of the tree, so we had something to eat. We'd put it there to keep it away from the bears. We actually left our cooking pots and our sleeping bags at this camp and went on down the canyon to get to the gorge. Here we are next to the Tuolumne River. Now the trail, very close to this point, climbs up over a buttress of the granite mountain to go around the gorge, but we're going to turn into the river and go right through the gorge. We came back past here late in the afternoon and picked up our things and went back to camp. And there at last we're right at the beginning of the Muir Gorge. That's the Tuolumne River. Now in many of these pictures you don't see much water because there are such large boulders that they obscure the view of the water until you get right to the edge of the water. Of course, it's very nice to have a muscular leg of a young man for a girl who can't make it on the slick rock. Of course, it's one thing to dive into a swimming pool. It's a different thing to dive into a rock-filled mountain's icy stream, especially when you're carrying a 100-foot climbing rope or a knapsack. The diving in was not a stunt, it was the only way to get in. Then we found this interesting boulder with a hole down one side, very smooth. You could slide down through the hole and push off to one side and come up out in the river next door. Everybody wanted to go through here. This was lots of fun. The only real hazard here is the slipperiness of the rock, because it's very well water-worn and very smooth. It's not like ordinary granite. You can see in the background there we're going to approach the real gorge, where the canyon is very narrow and the water occupies the full width between the cliffs. And at this point, we're approaching the Great Waterfall. Here's a place where the river drops, I guess, about 30 or 40 feet. It pours over in 3 waterfalls, the big one on the right as you look downstream, and 2 little ones side by side on the left. These rocks were extremely slippery and it was hard to get a footing on them. But we're going to make our way down to the pool between the 2 smaller waterfalls, and then go out to a rock between them and rope down over the face of that rock to get to the river below. Well, this is that point from which we will have to rope down. Here's Tony Charlton about to jump across one of the 2 small waterfalls to get to that rocky point. There's the big waterfall on the right as you go downstream. It falls all the way from the upper level to the lower level of the river here. Here's Francis Farquhar crossing the pool between the 2 small falls. This is looking over a little stream that happened to be falling down there. Well, we finally get all the party onto that central point, and here Buster Robinson is going ahead to see if he can find out how to get down. He didn't know at this point that it was an overhang. There, now you get a good view looking back upstream. In swimming through this part of the gorge, I had to swim with my left hand and use the right hand to hold the camera out of the water. Then in a few places I found the tip end of a boulder almost up to the water level, and I could get out there and take pictures. Here is Marjorie Bridge, later Marjorie Farquhar, doing her bit. It looks like she has high-heeled shoes, but she doesn't. She just has boots. After the others were down, the last man had to make a high dive from the rocky point at the top of the picture. This was the center, the main heart of the gorge, and of course I couldn't take pictures because there was no place to get out of the water. Now as you get back into the main Tuolumne Canyon, that is where the trail is, it becomes just a series of rapids which are lots of fun to float through. And then about a half a mile ahead of this, there is a trail on the other side of the canyon, and here's a view of the Muir Gorge as seen from that trail. This is the lower end of the Muir Gorge.